Gonna try, gonna try, gonna try. Work till I die, till I die, till I die. I'm gonna fail and get up, cause I'm not giving up on my dream.
Hi my lovely Frosty Fam, it's me, Karen Frost here at Nail Decadence. Welcome to my channel, welcome one and all. So I've got an acrylic video to share with you. It's a rather long, extreme set of nails that, yeah, I fancied doing, so I did. And I decided to give the old 3D acrylic French another go. I didn't do a fantastic job of it, but it is what it is. Not entirely happy with this set, but it still came out okay though. I still liked them. Anyway, as I'm showing you all the bits and bobs that I will be using, as always I mixed the coloured acrylic powders myself. So the grey and the orange I mixed myself. If you're interested, as mentioned on the notation on the screen, there is a link in the cards to a video that I made showing how I mix my custom acrylic coloured powders, so do check that out if you are interested in knowing how I do it. Let's get on with the set now, shall we? So first thing, after I have prepped the nails, applied the tips, etc., I will apply a thin clear base. I don't always show it in my videos, however rest assured I will always apply a thin clear base of acrylic to the nails before I start applying coloured powders. Always. It's for a number of reasons. Mainly, clear has the best adhesion properties of all the acrylic powders because it doesn't contain any colours, so there's nothing to disrupt its adhesive properties. Also, it gives me something to file back to when I'm going to do a redesign. It protects against staining, you know, the natural nail protects it against staining, and it's also the strongest and cheapest of the acrylic powders. So if I am sandwiching the colours in between clear, i.e. a thin clear base, then encapsulating in clear, I'm using less of the colour powders, you know, so I'm just using them for colour only and then using the clear to build the nail, and together with the thin clear base it just means I'm using less of my coloured powders, which means they last that little bit longer and it's a little bit cheaper for me, you know. I'm all for saving money where we can, so it makes sense to me, win-win. Anyway, on with the video. So as you can see, I've created an extended nail bed. So using the cover pink, I built out my little extended nail bed, built a nice little wall using my brush to shape it as best I can, but I'm not too worried because I will be filing it in. And then once I've got a good coverage with the colour, then I go ahead and cap that with clear acrylic to build my apex, ready to go. And then I'll leave that alone and let that set up before I file it in. Then I've moved on to the little finger and I'm using the orange, this pastel pale peachy kind of orange. I'm going to apply that to the tip, fade it backwards because I'm going to be doing an ombre, triple ombre on this fingernail. So I want to get good coverage with the colour in the area on the very tip of the nail, but then fading that back so that the colour fades out nicely. Therefore, when I add the next colour, I can then fade that over the top, and it just makes the ombre a little bit easier to do. Mega white isn't the easiest of colours to ombre with because it's a mega white. It has a lot, and I mean a lot, of white titanium dioxide pigment in it, which means it's a bit of a what's the word? It's a bit of a pig, really. It's a little bit of a pig to get it to ombre because it is so pigmented. So if you're doing an ombre with white, I would suggest using one that isn't quite so pigmented. It will just make your life easier. But if you want to challenge yourself, go ahead and use the Mega White because I promise it will challenge you. I was going for a really bright white, that's why I used it. Otherwise, I would have used a more of a milky white. But it depends on the look you're going for, so do bear that in mind. Maybe just use a normal white rather than the mega white, as it were, because the mega white does what it says on the tin, it's mega white. So maybe just use a normal standard white, and then it might not be as tricky to get it to ombre, but I get there. As you'll see, I back and forth between the colours and fade them over and over each other. So like I'll go to the grey, then I'll go back to the white, and then I'll go back to the grey, and then I'll go into the orange, and I'll just go back and forth between the 3 colours and blend it as best I can. As I'm adding those extra little beads, they are tiny and they are wet. That helps you to ombre it a little bit easier, but it is a little bit of a task, so take your time with it. As long as you're using tiny beads, you won't bulk out the nail. If you are using larger beads, you'll find that nail will get thick very, very quickly, and then when you go to encapsulate it, the nail will have been built up so much already that your encapsulation layer will be super thin, and then when you file, you'll end up filing into that ombre, which will then ruin the effect. It just won't look good because you file into the ombre. It's really important to keep that ombre as thin as you can so that you can cap it and make that clear layer as quite thick, so therefore you're not going to file into the ombre, because it's no point doing all of that work then file into it and ruin the effect. That would be so disheartening, so do bear that in mind. On screen it can look like the nails are thick, but I promise you at this point they are so thin. Keep those beads super tiny, and when I say tiny I mean minuscule. I mean less than a rice grain small, like really small. When you're just doing those little blending beads, tiny amounts. Anyway, so as you saw, I finished my ombre off and then did a swoop of the glitter. When I apply the glitter, I use just a small bead of clear acrylic, dip that into the glitter, and then apply that to the nail. Therefore the clear acrylic acts as my glue, as it were, and it will hold those glitters in place. Add that swoop on, then I've moved on to the middle finger and I've done the glitter on the free edge, and then I'm ombreing the cover pink over the top. If you are worried about your glitter moving whilst you are applying the cover pink and ombreing over the top, or your clear acrylic over the top, just move on to the next finger and let the glitter set up first if you're concerned about it moving, because if the acrylic hasn't set up, your glitter can move when you go to ombre or encapsulate it. So if that's a concern for you, don't go straight in like I did. Just leave it, move on to the next nail, then go back to it and then do your ombre. So yeah, I wasn't too worried because it wasn't that important if the glitter didn't move. There was enough there so that I knew I wouldn't have any gaps if any of it moved. So that's why I went straight in. And then on to the index finger, and I'm going to do a marble. Now I'm keeping these beads super wet because I didn't want really defined colours. I wanted it to be a really fine marble. I'm not sure how to describe what I mean. I wanted it to be a softer marble rather than having definite streaks of colour. Hope I'm making sense. So it's a softer kind of marble. That's what I was going for on this one. So that's what I'm doing. So as you saw, super wet beads, apply those, swoosh them with the brush and work my way up and down the nail and get it all covered. And then I'm also going to add some of the peach glitter over the top of that, sort of going in line with the marble, following the marble's direction, as it were. Then I'll leave that to set up, and I will cover my powders and my liquid over with some kitchen roll to protect it, because I don't want any dust in my products. And then I will file in that smile line. I mean, you can cap the other nails and then, if you're worried about the dust, but as you saw, I just brushed over the other ones with the nail brush to remove any dust, and it's fine. Then I should have dampened that nail down before I've applied the white, but I totally forgot to do it, but ordinarily you want to dampen that nail down after you've done the filing with a bit of monomer, and that just makes it easier for the next colour that you're going to use to go over and just meld in nicely. So yeah, I forgot to do it on this occasion, but you'll see me do it on the next layer. So I am applying the white, and I'm trying to get it all the way up that wall as thin as I can, but with proper coverage so there's no gaps. When you're doing a 3D French, you need the wall to be totally covered in the colour and then for it to drop off. So you'll see that I'm just brushing it very thinly over the base of the nail, but I'm making sure it's right the way up the wall, and that's how you get that 3D effect, so that there's a gap and your clear fills in that gap, if that makes sense. So yeah, I'll add the clear now, and then that will give me my depth. Excuse me, gives you that perception of depth, because I haven't built the white up all the way. It's only just up against the wall, and then there's a space because it's on the base of the nail, not all built up totally the same height all the way through. That's how you get that perception of depth. I could have done it a better job. I could have done a better job of it, to be honest. It didn't come out exactly according to plan, but it still came out pretty. So yeah, I wasn't, like I said at the beginning, I wasn't entirely happy with how my 3D French came out, but it still came out pretty, so it is what it is. So it's not the best 3D French I've ever done. I've done better ones, all acrylic. Yeah, all acrylic is much more difficult to do than if you're using gel polish, so I always like to challenge myself. So I'm going to encapsulate that little finger. As you see, I'm applying my clear acrylic over the top because we want to protect that glitter and the ombre, but I also want to build my strength and structure. These nails are extra long, so they do need an apex, as with all nails need an apex. However, even though they are extra long, you do not need to make them super thick. There's a misconception that long nails have to be very thick. They don't. As long as your apex is there and it's in the right place, it doesn't have to be massively high. So with nails this length, you definitely want your apex to be in that back third, but you still want your free edge to remain no thicker than a credit card, so your free edge thickness doesn't change, and shorter nails will have a lower apex than longer nails, but like I said, it doesn't have to be massively high, even though these nails are super long. And you guys know I wear my nails really long, and you see my nails very rarely break, so I've put my theories to the test, and it really does work. As long as your apex is in the right place, the strength is there and they will survive without them having to be as thick as bricks. Anyhow, carrying on with the encapsulating of the other nails. So I'm adding fairly large beads because I've got a large area to cover. You know, these nails are very long. So I'll add the beads on. I will blend out the back of the beads slightly, then I'll bring the front and maybe some of the middle of the bead down just a little bit, depending on where I want the acrylic to go. Where you pull your acrylic down from is how you dictate where your acrylic's going to lay. So you see I pat the back of the bead down, and then I sort of concentrate on more of the front of the bead so that most of that acrylic stays where I've placed it. So I'm just bringing down the front of that bead. Again, add another bead, pat the back of the bead down, and then I concentrate on bringing mostly just the front and middle part of the bead so that some of that stays where I initially placed it. Because I'm building that nail up, I'm building my strength and structure, so there's no point in me swiping it all the way down the nail and off the nail and onto my kitchen roll. That's pointless. I'm not trying to swipe all of that acrylic off. I want it to remain where I place it, where it is needed, because I don't need it on my kitchen roll, I need it on the nail. So when you're patting and pressing and pulling and stroking, do so quite gently so that you don't swipe loads of the acrylic off. Inevitably some of the acrylic will come off with your brush. That's just how it works. Your brush will retain some of that acrylic and end up on your kitchen roll. However, you want to try and keep most of it on the nail and not on your brush. So then I can add my cuticle bead. I'll get that nice and neat, tuck that in behind the colour so that I don't file it away when I come to filing. I do get file happy sometimes and end up filing some away, and there are remedies to fix that, so don't panic. Although I won't be showing you the remedies in this video because I didn't do it in this video, but I have other videos where I show you how to rectify if you've overfiled and stuff, so don't worry about that too much. So I will let that set up and I will go back to filing that 3D French in, yeah, just go back to filing that 3D French in. I don't know why I made such a meal of that sentence. Brain's going overdrive. And again, I have covered over my acrylic powders and monomer with the kitchen roll so that I don't get any dust in them. And once I'm happy, then I will remove all the dust after I've filed it away, because I want this to be a nice sharp French line. So I'm making sure that I file it quite well so that I get nice sharp lines. And as you see, I remembered this time to dampen down the nail with some monomer first before I go in with the next colour, which happens to be grey on this occasion. So I will get that grey right up that wall. Really important for a 3D French, because you want the shadowing look. That's the whole point, is that shadowing and depth perception. Normally when you're doing a French, you don't want the shadowing, you know. You just don't want the shadowing. I remember when I first started doing nails and I was trying to get the French right, and I'd always get shadowing. I never understood why. And obviously, you know, later on with experience and stuff, you work out that it's because the white was tapering off and I was filling it in with clear. That was giving me the shadowing. So I was doing, you know, essentially a 3D French way back when, and didn't really know what it was and was trying to avoid it. Crazy, eh? And then out comes with the years and years and years later, the 3D French, what's it called? Why I cannot find my words today? The trend. That's what it's called, the trend. The 3D French trend came around, and that whole thing that you tried to avoid, that shadowing you tried to avoid, is now what you're trying to get. And trying to get the shadowing on purpose is actually more difficult than trying not to get it. It's a technique for sure, definitely a technique. So yeah, whilst I've been rambling on, I finished filling in with the clear, and then I will let that harden, just because this is a jump cut, so you didn't see it, but I did wait for this to set up and be hard enough for me to file it before I began filing, of course. And you'll know when it's hard and ready to be filed when you get a clicking sound when you tap it with your nail file. If you get a dull thud when you tap it with your file, then you know it's not ready to be filed yet, and give it a minute or two more. And then when you tap it again, it will probably get the click clack sound that you're after, and then you can go ahead and file that in. So I am going to spend a fair amount of time filing this in because I put a bit too much clear on, so I'm having to really tidy that up with the nail file. Brush off the dust, give it a good old look and see if I'm happy with it, and if I'm happy with it, we will continue on. So dampen that down and make sure you wipe your brush on your kitchen roll after you do that, because you'll have dust particles on your brush. So do wipe it on the kitchen roll and then go into your monomer and pick up your bead. Very important, otherwise you'll have dust in your brush and you don't want that. So I'm going to apply the orange in the same way that I did the white and the grey, which is to get it right up the wall and then along the base of the nail, but not actually filling the gap in with the coloured acrylic powder, filling it in with the clear so that I get that shadowing, depth perception, illusion-y effect, which is so cool. Don't forget that when you're doing your 3D French, you can change the thickness of the wall so that you can have a thicker band of colour before the drop off occurs. You can do it, or you can make it thinner, and so that you've got a very narrow band of colour before the drop off. Play with it, there's all kinds of things you can do with a 3D French, but try not to build out the sides the way I have. I made this nail super fat on the sides and I totally lost my shape. I wasn't paying attention to the sides the way I should have done. I don't know why. I just wasn't paying attention to the sides, and you'll see that nail has gotten super wide on the sides, and that will need filing. Thank goodness for e-files, because that would have been no fun trying to taper that back in with a hand file. I was trying to make sure that I got right up in the wings and I wouldn't have any missing gaps of colour, and by doing that I ended up building it out really fat on the sides. Try not to do that, it's just more work for you when you're filing. So yeah, I should have just left the sides with colour instead of trying to put clear over them. That would have been, it would have made that less thick on the sides had I done it that way. So again, same as before, I've waited for that acrylic to set up and be ready to file, and once it is hard enough, then I will use my hand file to get that wall nice and sharp and neat and ready for my next colour to butt up to it. And in this case, it's not actually a colour that I'll be using the glitter instead this time, but I'm still going to use it the way I did the colours. You'll see in a moment once I've finished filing this wall in. I'm trying to make sure that it's even. It's difficult to tell when you've gone over the previous colour how even the nail is, but just try and guess. That's all you can do, is just try and guess and get it as the best you can. You could file the top of the nail so that you could better see if you want, but I figured I've got it quite even, so I didn't do that. But if you're in doubt, you can most certainly file in that, the top of the nail, and then you'll be able to see how even each side of that wall is. But yeah, I figured I've got it quite even, so I didn't do that. I wanted to have the end reveal, as it were, for dramatic effect. So I'm going to add the glitter now, and I'm using just a small bead of clear acrylic as usual to pick up the raw glitter. I never pre-mix my glitters. I think it's just a waste of time and a waste of acrylic powders, and you can use the glitters for gel and stuff as well. If you just keep them as raw glitters, just decant some in a little triangle dish. It's not difficult to pick up a clear bead of acrylic and then dip it into the glitter. So I'm using the glitters the same way I did the colours. Like I said, building it up that wall and then have that drop off, so it's not the same height as all the wall, but it drops off, and then you fill that drop off in with clear acrylic so that you can be looking into the nail, which is a really cool effect. So I'll just encapsulate that, like I said, fill that in with clear. Make sure that that nail is nice and strong, because don't forget, after I filled this in, that's it. I'm not adding any more acrylic. I'm building the structure of the nail as I go along, so that nail is much higher than it needs to be for sure, but that gives me enough to file into to reveal a nice sharp line between each of the colours, and that's what I want. Of course, with a 3D French, you want each section to be nice and sharp. So it's filing time. Are you a frosting filing freak? So yes, for my frosty filing freaks, here's the filing. If you're not interested in the filing, you can skip to that timestamp you saw in the corner of the screen and avoid it. But for you, my triple Fs, here we go. So here's the reveal of that 3D French. So I'm just using a medium carbide bit, and I'm going to file carefully, because I don't want to dig too deep. Carefully file and reveal that smile line on each colour as I go along, and it's so satisfying to reveal that French. Oh, super satisfying. See, it wouldn't have been that dramatic if I hadn't built it up into a monstrosity, would it? But I don't suggest you build it up into a monstrosity, because it is much more work than it needs to be. So once I've gotten that 3D French revealed fairly well, I'm not going to try and do it all in one go, but then I will switch my e-file bit to a extra fine carbide bit, and I will whiz around that cuticle area, make sure it is nice and flush, so that when the nail grows out, it won't be catching your hair or anything underneath it, which can cause lifting. Make sure there's no lip or step, that the height of the acrylic is the same and is in level with, which is what flush means, to the natural nail, so that as it grows out it looks neat and tidy. Then I will switch to my hand file and tidy up those sidewalls and the underarch and the free edge. I grabbed a new file, so you saw slightly on screen there. I did prepare that nail file by running another nail file along the edges. If you don't do this, you can cut yourself with a hand file, so do score the edges of the file before you use it. And then, like I said, I will file those side walls and the underarch and the free edge, get everything nice and straight and squared off. And you'll see I start underneath and then rotate up, and keep that nail file straight along those sides when I'm filing the side walls. So under the underarch, and then rotate the file up and keep it straight along those side walls. Going for a square set, so that nail file has to be totally straight. If it leans in any which way, you will have a nail that goes wonky in some direction, whether it's left or right, it will go in a wonky direction as opposed to straight, which is what you want when you're going for a square set of nails. It's all about angles, so keep that nail file nice and straight along those side walls. Therefore you will get a nice straight side wall. You want to make sure that side wall is in line with the natural nail, so that it is growing straight out of your natural side wall and your natural area where it should be growing out from. So make sure it's all in line. Then I will switch to my e-file, and I will go back to that medium carbide bit and just refine the shaping of the nail. So I am contouring this nail. It's not doesn't particularly need debulking per se, but I do want to blend in those sides. You can see there where you can see the file lines there where I squared off those sides. I don't want to leave that harsh edge there. I want to blend that into the rest of the nail and curve it into the nail so that the nail is a nice curve and doesn't have any angles on it. The surface of the nail needs to be a nice semicircle arched shape, so you don't want any harsh edges on the sides because that just doesn't look very nice. You want it to be nice and contoured, so use your e-file to contour it. You could do it with a hand file. I have pains in my joints and my muscles. My Frosty Fam know this, but I get used new subscribers all the time. So I use my e-file as much as possible, but you can use your hand file to do this job by all means. If you don't have any problems with your joints and your muscles or your hands in general, then go ahead, use your hand file. But for me, I will utilize my e-file for as much as I can to save my fingers, arms and wrists and elbows and everything. Shoulders, the whole lot. So yeah, I will contour with my e-file. If you have not had any experience with an e-file, I would suggest definitely getting some e-file training. Even if you have been practicing at home for a while, still get yourself some e-file training. It makes a world of difference. I was self-taught for many years, and once I did my training, it just opened up a whole new world. So there's always something new to learn with e-file training, so definitely, if you haven't done so already, it's worth investing in to maximize the potential of what your e-file can do for you. Definitely e-file training is the one. It really does make a difference. You know, you get to learn the speeds and how to maneuver it correctly, and yeah, one-to-one training is definitely worth doing. Anyway, so yeah, I'm just contouring. So I want to blend that cuticle area up into the apex and then down the rest of the nail. I don't want any harsh lines. I want it all contoured. So I want a curve that goes up from the cuticle area, hits that apex, then slopes down towards the free edge, and then on the sides I want it to curve again from one side to the other in a gorgeous arch. You know, get that nail shaped spot on and it will make a world of difference. It really will. So on the last part, I will finish off the shaping by using my hand file. Because these are very long squared nails, I want to be sure that those side walls are super straight. So I will go in with the hand file again and just make sure that those side walls and that free edge are totally squared off and really neat and straight and looking chef's kiss, you know, it just, a well-shaped nail is just gorgeous. It's just gorgeous. So definitely take the time. If you're going to do a set of nails, take the time to file it in. So once I've done that, I'm just going to use my buffing file to then blend the rest of that in and make sure there are no lumps and bumps. Because again, by filing those sides, I might have some edges built in again, so I want to make sure that they are not there. So you'll see I go up one side of the nail, go round the cuticle area, then go down the other side of the nail, and then I will do the body, and I'm blending in the violin motion, and then up and down motion, and then the violin motion, and then up and down motion, and I'm contouring. I'm still contouring, always contouring as I go, and stop and look. Always stop and look. Don't just look at the nail you're working on. Stop and look at the nail you're working on, but also look at the other nails that are next to it, because you want your set to be uniform. A routine is definitely key to getting a uniform set, but also just the simple thing of stopping and looking. because if you just focus and zero in on that one nail, then you just zero in and focus on the next nail, and then you zero in and focus on the other nail, your nails could actually be looking different when they're all together. So really, really important, stop and look at all of them together. They are a set, they are not individuals. You want them all to be looking a similar thickness, a similar width, a similar height, you know. Get that continuity going throughout your set. It really does make a difference to the finished look. So take your time with your filing, get it right, get it as perfect as you can get it. I mean, perfect is subjective, of course, it's in the eye of the beholder, but get it as perfect as you can. That's perfect to you. So once I'm happy with that, I will dust them off, and now it's time to bling it, baby. Oh yes, getting out some crystals. So I've grabbed some of these smoky crystals and some clear crystals to go with this set. So I'm just using some rubbing alcohol and a lint-free wipe to remove the dust from the nails and from the fingers ever so quickly. Just make sure that the fingers are in properly, well, the fingernails are in properly. Then I'll grab my SBD London No Wipe Sticky Diamond Nail Gel, which I love for putting crystals on. This stuff is amazing and it's tack free. I highly recommend it, and I love the packaging because it's got that pen nib, but it also has a brush, and I love it. It's also got a little compartment in the bottom that you can use to put a few crystals in should you wish. You know, I love this stuff. It holds on crystals really, really well. I've got nothing but praise for this product. I love it to pieces. Since I've been using it, I rarely have crystals fall off, so I do highly recommend it. I use it on myself all the time. Yeah, love that stuff. So I'm just going to use the clear and the smoky grey crystals in a random design. I was just making it up as I go along as usual. So I'll just add as many as I feel like. And as usual, because the diamond gel does not set up until you get it under a LED UV light, you can play around with your crystal placement as much as you want and get it the way you want it before you cure it and set it in place, which I love because I remember the days of using nail glue, and wherever you put that gem, that's where it was staying. You couldn't move it after you placed it. So yeah, I love the diamond gel for that. You can move it around, mess around with your placement as much as you like, and when you're happy with it, just flash cure it in place. Bob's your uncle, sorted. No more getting out the pliers to nip off crystals when you're not happy with the placement and filing it down, because the glue would leave, you know, a rough surface on the nail. So you'd have to get your old buffing block, buff that down, and then add the glue on again. Yeah, diamond gel just stops all of that madness, which I love. Makes life a lot easier. So I would nudge those crystals around and fit a few more on and make sure they are all sat where I want them to sit, and then I will flash cure them in place. I'm just having a look and deciding whether I have them in line or not, and whether I'm happy, whether I want to add any more. And I'll just nudge them around, just tiny little nudges, and once I think that is straight, I will just use this LED torch thingy-me-jig and I will flash cure those in place. They will get a full cure once I've top coated and cure for 60 seconds. They will cure for the 60 seconds then at the same time, so that's why I'm only flash curing them, because I know I've still got to top coat. So I'm just using the crystal smoky grey ones around the cuticle area, but also some of the clear ones in a little tiara around the cuticle area on the ring finger, the 3D French one. Nudge them about, and once I'm happy with that, I will again flash cure those in place. And now it's time to top it off and keep it tough. Oh yes, Oh, the magic. Love it, love it, love it, love it. It's the it's got to be everyone's favourite part, isn't it? The top coating, where you see the design just come to life and that finished effect of everything. Ugh, I love it. Anyway, as usual, when we get to this point, you guys know we are at the end of the video. There is some video footage of the finished set and some photos at the end for you to watch as usual. As you can see, I'm using a small brush to get around the crystals. Do not get your top coat over your crystals, go around them, bud it up next to them, but not over the top of them, otherwise they will lose their sparkle and shine. But anyway, I would like to take this opportunity to say thank you ever so much for coming to my channel, watching this video, spending some of your most precious time with me. Thank you, I appreciate you ever so much. If you have not done so already, please go ahead and click that subscribe button, join the Frosty Fam. We would love to have you. They're a fun little group, they're just lovely people. And if you have enjoyed this video or it's helped you in any way, shape or form, do please go ahead and click that like button for me. It gives me a little bit of feedback and lets me know that you're enjoying the content, but also helps me with the algorithm, you know what YouTube's like. And if you feel like it, you are more than welcome to leave me a comment. I'm happy to talk to you. So that is all I have for this time, peeps. You take care now, and I'll speak to you all again soon. Bye for now.